Hey, this is Robin from the Ocean. We're here at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco, where we're going to play tonight with The World is a Beautiful Place in Shiloh. And today we're going to show you our live rig. So the beginning of everything is basically our sequencer MacBook on stage here, where we run a Logic Pro session, and it's basically a show file that has every song of the set list in the whole session. We press start at the beginning of the show, and then it runs through until the very end of the show. So we press play, and this machine controls the quad cortex, which is our guitar amps and effects via MIDI program and control changes. It also controls our synchronized lighting, which is in time with the music. It plays the backing tracks of a bunch of instruments that we are not bringing with us, like all the brass on Holocene, for example, or the strings on the Centric records. And most importantly, it's giving us a click track, which is not going to the PA, obviously, but only to our own ears, making sure that we play in sync with this. We don't need to touch it during the show at all. It just plays.
Basically, we have a Logic session for every tour, a dedicated set list with all the songs that we want to play. We always have to go through the volumes of each tracks because some sounds might be a bit louder than others. And once we have that done and dialed in, we practice the set. And then in an ideal scenario, we just push the play button when we play live and everything works.
We have an M32R there, which is the front of house desk. We have a M32C here and the DL32 acting as a preamp. So, and basically what the M32C is like, it's separating the monitors for us and the sound for the front of house.
And the outputs are routed to our Sennheiser senders and connected through an antenna, which sends the signal to our receivers and into our in-ears, basically.
So as I said before, this M32C is like kind of splitting the signal between the front of house and what we have in the ears. And these are two different setups. I mean, what I'm listening to my ear is not what people are listening during the show. So, because obviously when you're a drummer, I guess you're using a bit more click, or it's more important, and for me, it's important to listen to my voice, and I guess for Matthias, it's important that he listen to space. Everybody is doing their monitors, you know, so this is me, this is Paul, this is Matthias, Robin, David. If I want more kick, more snare, toms, I have all the tracks here, overhead, bass, guitars. We have the keys, we have the samples, click, vocals, and then I can choose what I want in my mix, if I want more vocals or less bass or whatever.
We're in a little robot form here. Everybody has a different frequency, so we're not interfering with each other's mixes.
I had a Dietzel VH4. David did too, I think, before he joined the band, actually. And then I had a Mesa Boogie Triaxis and a 290 power amp. But it just became unfeasible traveling with those beasts because they're just so fucking heavy. So we eventually turned to campers, and we had one camper each for a while, which was great because they weigh like 7 kilos a piece, basically. My 290 Triaxis rack was like 30 kilos, something like that. And we're just constantly flying around the globe. And so we just, like, everything in this band related to gear now is about minimizing weight. That is almost like the most important thing besides sound, obviously. And only last year we switched to a new unit, the Neural DSP Quad Cortex. And this has further allowed us to reduce the weight from 2 campers at 7 kilos each, 14 kilo total, to one single unit of 2.5 kilos that we use shared between the both of us, basically. So it's we run both guitars in stereo out of this thing. And yeah, it has just allowed us to basically eliminate one entire rack from our travel setup. So that's great. And the unit sounds fantastic. So as you can see, the quad cortex is in the rack. Now the question is, what is controlling the quad cortex? We're not controlling it ourselves with our feet as a pedal board unit. It's being controlled via MIDI from our MacBook on stage. So the technical heart piece or centerpiece of the show is actually that MacBook, which we're running Logic Pro on. And we basically have a session file for the entire show, every song in a consecutive order. At the beginning of the show, we press play, and then the session runs, and there's program changes and control changes that switch the patches on the quad cortex.
Every program change is being triggered by MIDI. Every song has its own scene. Every scene has very similar sounds. We have like a clean sound, like a crunch sound, and a distorted sound. And basically, like every scene, the only difference that it has is the effects.
I'm also using program change for vocal effects. That means I'm here using main stage, where I have like 3 different setups. One for clean, one for distortion. And for the distortion, I'm using a Soundtoys Decapitator plugin. It's not about having like a super distortion sound, because it doesn't sound good, you know, but it's just to have a little bit of like, little bit of grain, I would say, you know. And also I'm using, for example, for Jurassic and for a few effects, I'm using a telephone EQ, which is basically cutting the high and cutting the low. And this is basically the three effects I'm using, which are triggered by the MIDI channel here. It's basically like the guitar, like what they're doing with the quad cortex. I'm doing pretty much the same with the vocals. So Chris Edrich mixed the Holocene vocals, and he was working on some very special effects like a vocoder or robot voices, which we were like, we have to use this live somehow. And especially for Atlantic at the beginning and Subboreal, there's this vocoder effects. So I'm gonna play it for you now, so you can realize what it is. And this, we're kind of blending this all together. So this is very difficult to redo it live, so this is why we choose to do it this way. But of course, you have to export all the effects from the mix and import it in the timeline, that everything sync, and it's not very mix loud. It's just to bring a little something more. Hey, hey.
There's a faint longing for something that's long lost and gone, that you remember from another life, another time. Something quaint, something neat, must have been quite a treat, a shared conspiracy, something not around no more.
Okay, that was just so you can understand how we're blending this together, and so it's not like cheating, you know, it's more like adding a little something to make it a little bit better, I would say, because this vocoder effect is very difficult to do live, and I think it really brings something to the songs.
So as mentioned, we also run MIDI tracks that control our lighting via a MIDI to DMX converter box, which is kind of self-built and improvised. So this is just the effects that we bring that are in the floor package. So we run the backing tracks, we run the sequencer track here. And this is triggering the lighting. So basically we play keyboards on a virtual lighting desk. This is what it essentially is. So you have the keyboard here on the left side. Every note is associated with a certain light that we bring with us. So these here are the blinders, for example. So they just work on one channel, on and off. That's the first blinder, that's the second blinder. This is the first atomic on stage left, these 3 channels. This here is the second atomic on stage right, and this is the 2 center atomics behind the drums. So they consist of several notes because there's different pieces of information that they need to get from the sequencer, basically. So there's velocity, MIDI velocity controlling the intensity lights basically, and the length of the note controls basically the on and off. So it's extremely nerdy stuff and kind of hard to explain. But when we want to do a fade out, for example, what we have to do is we have to program basically a sequence of very short notes, which each have a different MIDI velocity. So we start with MIDI value 127, which equals 100%, and we bring it down in a ramp to 0%. So this is what simulates a fade, basically. This here is like MIDI velocity one. Well, this is not 100%, but this is 91. So this is pretty bright, and then it gradually goes down. The color shows you that the velocity is going down to almost 0 here. And this is basically how a fade looks. If I play this, you see the blinder going on bright and then slowly fading out. Essentially, the sequencer track is running the lights, and the lights respond to the MIDI notes that we have programmed here in the sequencer track. Shit does go wrong, not so much recently, because I think now this band is just a very well-oiled machine, but we have been in so many situations that were just fucking embarrassing. You know, like trying to go into a heavy part and then the MIDI fails or stalls, and then you just get stuck on a clean sound. So it's gonna be something like this, you know? You'll hear the click track now, which we normally only have on our ears. Now going to the PA. Here it comes.
Nice clean sound. So yeah, so the distortion wasn't working in this case. So this is what can go wrong sometimes. But usually now it doesn't happen so much anymore.
Yeah, or we skip a beat. You know, if you miss one single count in and you count 5, but there's 6, then you're behind. So that means the amp channels will still switch at the right moment and you're playing wrong.
Yeah.
And so you will have that glitch or whatever. Yeah, but I think that's just a matter of staying alert and also just practice and getting used to it. It really hasn't happened in a very long time. So this was a little rig rundown. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And make sure to check out our latest album, Holocene, on a digital streaming platform of your choice, or buy it on vinyl from pelagicrecords.com.